Okay, hi doing, and welcome to another event with Dublin Coding School. This evening, we're going to be talking about data analytics and some of the systems used by data analysts. Two of the main ones, actually, SQL and Tableau. And we have a resident expert here to talk about that. One of the key lecturers here on the lecturing team for data analytics, Daniel Reddy. Daniel is also the EMEA, which is a Europe, Middle East and Africa data lead monetization for TikTok, the major social media app, and also used to be at Facebook and KPMG. So we're delighted to have Daniel here. I'm going to hand over to him in just a moment. But before I do, I'd like to just say a couple of things. One is that our data analytics course will be starting on the 22nd of November, and it'll be running for 8 weeks. And it'll be covering SQL and Tableau, like we're talking about tonight, but also Python. And Daniel is actually going to be leading the next group, so who's speaking here tonight. And if you want to check out any of the info on that course, it's dublincoding.ie. Now, we're going to get into this now, but just before we do, if you have any questions at all, please let us know by typing them in underneath in the chat in Facebook, and we will get to any questions at the end. And if you're watching the recording, if you have questions, you can pop us an email at info@dublincoding.ie, and we will get back to you with an answer to that question. So without further ado, Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm good, Luke. How are you? Thank you so much for this invitation.
Great, no problem. It's great to have you here. So maybe what we'll do is, I know we have some questions already prepared for the end, where we're going to maybe talk about the role of the data analyst. We might get straight into your brief presentation this evening, looking at data analytics and what is SQL and Tableau.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Luke, for that. And hi, everybody. I don't know exactly how many people are in, but hi to everybody there, maybe in different time zones, different countries, etc. So by the way, just to give a quick introduction about myself, my name is Daniel Reddy. I am the data analytics manager here in TikTok in Dublin, which is our headquarters, and the moderation department. And obviously, you guys obviously heard a little bit about myself from Luke as well. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time in telling too much about myself. Instead, I'm going to explain to you guys in terms of what is a data analyst, what does a data analyst do, and we're also going to talk about a few of the tools that is important for a data analyst. And I know that people, whoever turned up for this call, are pretty much interested in understanding what the skill set required for this with the fantastic role, very, very valuable role. And obviously, if you have any questions, please drop them in. We want to answer as many questions as we can. So drop them in the end of the presentation, then we'll take up all the questions there. So quickly, let me go ahead and share my screen there. Cool. So going into the presentation there. So data analyst. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so data analyst, anybody depending on which area of level you are. You can be a newbie in analytics, or you're really you've just finished your college, or maybe you are in a different sector, or maybe in telecom or anything sector, and you can be a data analyst. So first and foremost, what does a data analyst do? So for a data analyst job, I have divided into 4 major pillars. So first thing what a data analyst would do is all obviously related to data. So you structure the data. So what does this mean is basically you taking any random data. It could be structured data, it could be unstructured data, and saving them into a system. So you're saving the data in a format that is easily stored and then also easily read. So how do we do that is basically we design and maintain data, and we do that into something called, we store them into something called databases. So we do this by structuring the data in a format and then saving it into a database. Secondly, after the data is obviously stored, and we know that the data is important to us, what do we do is that we try to understand what the data is for. So what we do is we mine the data. So as you already know, obviously, in 21st century, with the advancement of internet, there is data everywhere you can look at in your phones about yourself, etc., etc. So it's very, very important to make sure that to get value out of the data, you need to find what kind of data they are and make it as useful as possible. So this is a process, it's called data mining. So data mining comes from taking data from different sources. Like, for example, you can even when you go to a song, you can also take in the data from a song, from a video. These are also data. So you're taking a data from different sources. So we call them as primary and secondary data sources. And then what we do is that we structure them, we organize them, and then we mine them. And then moving from there, then the interesting part, when we have cleaned the data, when we have mined the data, what we do is we want to make sure that we want to see the data in a way that is easily understandable by people, that they can interrupt and make use of them. This is basically called data visualization. And this is obviously, I would say, one of the most interesting part of a data analyst's job, where they take the data and then they put it into a format, and then and they build a report or a dashboard or any kind of visualization that makes more sense to a person when he or she is reading it. And that is when we call as preparing insights reports and dashboards. And then finally, but not the least, what we do is called collaboration. Now, imagine that you, as a data analyst, you have make sure that you have got all the data, you've structured it, you have mined it, you have put the data in a format that's readable, you have cleansed the data. Now what you have done is you have made some reports and made some insights of the data. So now what do you do is that you are going to send this data, send this insight to somebody that would be useful for them, that they can then use to make the business decision, or rely on the data to take a step that they think is wise based on the data. That is basically we call as collaboration. So collaboration basically means you working with your cross-functional teams, with your stakeholders, in helping them develop different processes, improve different policies and data governance with the answer that you get from the data itself. Cool. So moving forward, I had a quick slide. I know that this is one of the things you guys must be really, really interested in terms of, I get a lot of questions as well, from a lot of folks, that especially people who are new to the data field, what kind of skill set do I need? So obviously there are different wide ranges of skill set that you would actually require, but then there are two kind of main skills that is basically, I would say, a must skill to become a successful data analyst. One is the technical skills, and then is also your management skills as well. So just focusing on the technical skills, in technical skills, first and foremost is that you need to know a database language. So I'll obviously go in more detail in SQL. So database language is basically any language that is used to talk to a particular database. So in this case, there are languages as SQL, which is the most used one. And then we also have R and Python. And then apart from that, also a lot of smaller companies, they also use a lot of different analytics using in Microsoft Excel, in Google Sheet. So it's also a good thing to know about them and know how to use them and make pivot tables and lookups, and et cetera, et cetera. Apart from that, as I said, the data visualization part is also very, very key. So as a data visualization software, you need to know at least one of the good industry practices. I know there are few different BI tools in the market right now, but then I would say Tableau, Power BI, and ClickView would be one of the best industry practices, because those are the best in the market, and most of the companies in today's world use them. So and again, we obviously in the course we also go through thoroughly in terms of teaching how to use Tableau, what's the use case of Tableau, and et cetera, et cetera. And then apart from that, obviously, it's also important that you have some kind of statistical skill set. So that means some mathematical and statistical skill set. But again, just to mention there, this is not, you don't need to be a master's degree in mathematics. You just have to have a basic foundation knowledge, so that you can grow your skill, and more important, understand the basic foundations of analytics and that concept. And then moving from technical skill, I would also say management skill is as important as technical skill, because sometimes what happens for a person who wants to become a data analyst, they focus on technical skill because it is important for sure. But at the same time, your management skill is as important as your technical skill for a DA role. So in terms of management skill, there are three skills that I would say it's very, very important. And this is something that you also would, people like good companies also revolute in terms of when they are evaluating you. One is your critical thinking, Then the other one is problem solving, and then your project management, where you, for example, as a data analyst, it's your job to manage a project from end to end. So it's your skill set, how you manage your project, how you work with when you work with other team to make sure that you collaborate in different projects, and etc. etc. Cool. And then moving forward, just to give you guys a little bit of understanding of the two things that I said in terms of technical skill, you need to know a particular language to talk to a database. So one of the most used language is SQL. So just to give you guys a little bit of understanding, I actually made this funny present point here. So imagine this, that in the olden days, what used to happen is that in a company, we take a sheet of paper, we do a lot of different filing, we put the information there, and then what we do is that we take those files, we put it into a cabinet, and then we put the cabinet into an office warehouse. So it's basically the same thing. In today's world, we don't have that scenario anymore. In today's world, what we do is we have something called a database. So database are basically the same thing. So for example, so we have data that we have, and what we do with the data is that we put the data in a format called data tables, and then we put a lot of different tables inside a data warehouse. So now going back to the olden days, like for example, if you wanted to fetch particular data from your warehouse, you would have to walk into the warehouse physically, open a particular drawer, get the data out, read it out, and then put it back. In today's world, we don't have to do that because there is a language called SQL. So SQL is basically the same thing. What you're doing is that you're building a shopkeeper. So in other words, a shopkeeper would go to the database, talk to the database, and then pull the data. It's basically the same thing where you have a language. That language, what it does is it talks to something called a data warehouse. So and then based on what you ask, that what information you give to the manager, which is SQL, then SQL will then go and fetch that particular data from the warehouse and give it to you. Cool. So that's the quick understanding of what is SQL, and then moving forward from there, and then what is Tableau as well. So Tableau is one of the best industry used BI tool. So obviously the reason Tableau is being used is obviously because of a lot of different benefits. I just wanted to put in a few different aspects in terms of what I feel why Tableau is one of the best used BI tool. One thing is that it has a very good visualization capacity. You can use a lot of different graphs, a lot of different aspects, and build really impressive dashboard that not only looks good, but at the same time it's very easy to understand and share with people and read the data itself. Apart from that, there are a few other aspects as well. One is ease of use. It's very user friendly. It's very easy to learn. It's easy to use and also to share. Apart from that, in Tableau, you can connect to different data sources. Obviously, when you are working in a big company, or you are pulling data not from one single sources, you're obviously working on building an insight, which is obviously quite complex. You're trying to answer a business question that is obviously a very complex question. So you're going to pull data from multiple different sources, different type of data as well, which obviously Tableau has the capacity. And then apart from that, few other things is that it's mobile friendly. And what I mean by mobile friendly is, for example, if you were sitting here in Ireland and you build a dashboard, you can share that dashboard at the same time with another person in, let's say, in US, and he or she would get the same thing that you have built at the same time. So it's real time. It's really user friendly, and also it's high performance because it is stored into a server. So you don't have to keep on using your physical drive memory in terms of reloading it. It is saved on the server, so that if I log in at any time zone or from anywhere in the world, I'll see the same data that anybody else would also see from a different place. Cool. So that brings us obviously to our end of my presentation. But again, here, I'm going to quickly take a pause and give you guys a little bit time. Please go ahead. The more you ask, the more you learn. Make sure you put in your questions right now. And then I'll give it back to Luke to read out the question. And then obviously we will go ahead and answer them.
Great, and thank you very much, Daniel. So we've quite a few people watching, so we'll see if any questions come in. But just before I check there, I just wanted to, so SQL seems like it's pretty essential for data. Oh, sorry, I think I cut out there, Daniel, but I'm back now. If you can hear
me. I can hear you, Luke, now.
Yeah, great. So SQL seems like it's pretty essential. I mean, would it be possible to be a data analyst without knowing SQL?
So the answer to that is absolutely no, because as a data analyst, the first thing as a data analyst is that you need to fetch data from a data warehouse. The only way you can talk to a database is using a particular programming language. Obviously, you have different programming language as R and Python, but those are programming language that you talk to a non-relational database, non-structured database. So SQL is a programming language that you talk to a structured database. So structured database is anything that is in a tabular form. I'm sure everybody knows what's an Excel sheet. So for example, imagine that you go on an Excel sheet, you have rows and columns. So that is basically what it means with a structured database. So if you want to talk to any kind of structured database, SQL is the only language that is applicable to talk to a database. So yeah, to answer the question, it is absolutely necessary to know SQL.
It's essential then, yeah, and every company is using it. So that's kind of interesting to know, and it's the first module on our course actually. So just to say, what do you really love about the job of being a data analyst?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's a very interesting question. So I would say the best thing of being a data analyst is that you get to play around with a lot of different data. And what happens is that imagine that you're playing with clay, and you have a lot of different clay, but as a data analyst, you can make the clay into something that is useful for the business. So as a data analyst, you have a lot of roles and responsibility. One thing is that you are responsible to make a lot of different changes to the business, because business relies on data. And obviously for a particular company, the data is gold. And you as a goldsmith, what you do is you take the raw material, which is the data, and then you work on it, and you create something that is valuable to the company, and is valuable to the company because they rely on that particular data to make decisions that actually impacts the growth of the company. So that, I think that I would say is the best part of being a data analyst.
Yeah, and you'd have to say that there aren't many companies in the world now that don't use data, and I suppose it's data-driven decision making is really where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say it's not even 99%. It's 100% of companies would have to use data, because because if you don't rely on data, you're just relying on your opinion and what you think would be the future. Because again, and I don't think nobody is an astrologer or a prophet who can do that. So obviously you need to rely on the data to make the decision that would be successful for your company.
Yeah, and I know we've asked this before. It's actually in your interview because your profile's online. But what would you say are the top 3 attributes of a really great data analyst? Because it isn't all technical skills, is it?
So yes, as I said, it is technical skill is important, but in today's market, and obviously, like even from my companies, and when I take interviews as well, one of the things that I really focus on is critical thinking and problem solving, which is obviously your soft skills, your management skills. So one thing is that as the data analyst, you need to work on looking at the data from different angles. So for example, if somebody asks you a question that, hey, how can I increase the profitability of my company? So obviously you're going to look at the data and you say, this particular item sells a lot, why don't we give a discount to it? But then critical thinking and problem solving come in a different angle. So let's say if you're looking at the data, you're going to look at something like, for example, this is a particular product that sells, but this only sells to our customers with this particular age group, or this particular, or in this particular season. So just to give an example, I know this is a very basic example, but what I mean by this is I'm trying to explain to you that this is where, as a data analyst, your critical skill comes into play. And big companies, obviously, we look at that from a data analyst because we expect a data analyst to be strategical thinking. They should also be a strategical consultant that can help the business and can consult the business. Obviously, depending on the data, you can consult the business to make different changes and policies that can help us.
Yeah, great. And there might be some people watching this thinking, okay, if I study this, what kind of career path is there? So, I mean, what is kind of the career path coming in as a data analyst, from the start? So where would you start? You maybe a junior analyst, and then, because you're there, you're actually a manager now, you're the data lead at TikTok. So maybe if you talk them through what would be the career path from, starting out.
Yeah. So again, that answers the question. It's depending from individual to individual. To be honest, it depends on how, in what level you are in terms of your data skills, in all the skills that I already spoke about. But let's say, imagine that you are totally new to the data world, and obviously you go to the course, or you did something by yourself. The first and foremost is to obviously to get in the role of a data analyst, where you can join a company and help them to kind of regulate data, like, for example, a data entry job, or a very, very junior data analyst job. So these are the jobs that I would say would be a first entry job for somebody who is new to this environment.
Yeah, very good. And then you can work right your way up to the top, can't you? It stops and it doesn't really ever stop, does it? It goes right up to being into artificial intelligence. We've actually had a question come through. So can you provide a real life example of how you might use SQL? And he's saying, since data is very broad, you can have a large data. How would you select to pinpoint what you need? Well, I suppose, where would we answer that? An example of where you'd use SQL.
So to answer that question, it's very, very simple. For example, first and foremost, whenever as a data analyst, you just don't go to a database and pull data. First, what you do is you get a project. So the project is a question. Like, for example, it's a BI question. So for example, when you get a question, you want to look at, so let's say, let me give you an example.
So sorry, when you say BI, that's business intelligence, isn't it? So
that's correct. So
basically
BI stands for business intelligence question. So any kind of BI question that you're trying to answer. So let's say the business comes up to you and says, I want to see how did we do in last quarter. So let's say if you work in Amazon, that's a good example. And Amazon want to look at how many people ordered from us, how much
that could be the marketing department want to know, or the finance department. It could be some other department wants to know this. Is that right?
That's correct. Obviously, when you work in a company, you have different departments. There's marketing, for example, finance, and et cetera, et cetera. So depending what kind of project you're working on, for example, if you're working on a project that you're helping the marketing team would ask you a question like, how successful was a marketing campaign? That's where you will then go and pull out the metrics from the table that is required to answer that particular question. So whoever asks this question, to answer your question, what will I pick up from the database? It totally depends on what question you're trying to answer.
Okay, so that the question was being asked by, it was somebody called Tutu there. And so really, I suppose the answer is SQL pinpoints whatever you're looking for. So it depends on the business question. If there's any other questions, do let us know. I was maybe going to just ask a couple more. So how did you actually get into data analytics? Because you've also been at some very big companies, but maybe people are interested, what drew you to the field? How did you get into it?
Okay, yeah. So again, just from my personal experience, I'm actually not from a data background. So I did my bachelor's in financial accounting. So I'm nowhere in the technical side. So obviously, but then when I started working, I obviously fell in love with data. I felt like data is something that really excites me, that I think can be my career. But again, before choosing a career, you still have to go through a top-down approach. First and foremost, you need to learn. Then you also have to think that, do you love that particular job? If that job really, really excites you, interests you. So my change from finance to accounting is basically being where I went and studied by myself, did a lot of different courses, exactly the same thing what I'm explaining you guys in terms of what skill set is required. I went obviously through the internet, worked on the skill set that's required to be a successful data analyst. And then once you acquire that skill set, and then you obviously go ahead and apply, and then and at the same time you keep on learning. So it's a ongoing learning aspect where you need to keep on learning and growing as a data analyst there.
Okay, we've just had another question come in. We might just take a couple more, and it's from Christine, and she's asking, is Python also related to data analytics?
Yeah, so Chrissy, that's a great question, and the answer to that question is also and yes. So as I said, so what happens is that, as I said, SQL is a programming language that talks to a structured database. So anything structured database would be anything that is in a row and table format. But then there are also a lot of different data that we have. So just to give an example, text, like for example, when you guys are on Facebook, you see posts. In a post, there are comments, there's likes. So there are different types of data. There is voice, etc. So Python is basically used to talk to any other database that is not structured. So yes, Python is also very, very important. But at the same time, we also use Python for different aspects as well. So we also go into machine learning, which is also a part of data analytics. We also use different types of forecasting modeling, algorithms to do. You guys must have heard about machine learning as well, artificial intelligence as well. So to run those algorithms, that is where we need to use Python or any other programming tool. Also, there is R as well, and there's Anaconda as well, but Python would be the most used in the industry.
Yeah, and I only learned recently, actually, of one of the other lecturers that Python isn't named after the snake at all. It was named after Python, Monty Python's Flying Circus, the comedy show. So, but actually, and it's a good point. It's a good question. It leads us on to, by the way, if there are any questions, we'll take the last two now. So, because what I might do is just start to wrap up and tell you a bit about the course. So it's going to be starting on the 22nd of November. And Daniel, who's, as we said, is the EMEA data lead at TikTok, will be lecturing on the course, leading the course. And it will be covering in 3 modules, SQL and Tableau, and actually Python, which we just mentioned there. So they're the 3 modules on the course. You'll have a project as well to do on the course in each of them to get your knowledge up. And it takes place in the evenings. It's 6:30 till 9:30, 2 to 3 evenings a week. And also just to say, after the course, you get access to a career center. And that's where we'll help you with your CV and your online presence, and hopefully look to get you into a role or an internship. And we've partnered with companies around Ireland who are looking, they let us know when they've open roles. But we also partnered with Scale Ireland, Trinity College, Launchbox and Tangent, which are startup incubators. We've had good success putting interns, graduates into these startups. We've had 2 great success stories just last month, where 2 students of ours, Svetlana and also Wilson, who studied with us, they did a data analytics course in May. They were placed into internships in Irish startups through Launchbox. And recently, both of them have been hired as junior analysts at Accenture. So it was a fantastic turnaround for 2 of them. One of them came from the beauty sector. The other one had worked in construction. So it is possible. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, can I change my career by getting involved with you guys at Dublin Coding School, you absolutely can. And you can see the stories of those students on our website. We can send them out as well with the recording of this event. So I'll just double check if there aren't any more questions. There aren't. So look, the way you can get in touch with us is dublincoding.ie, or you can email me at luke@dublincoding.ie. If you're watching the recording of this, if you have a question as well, you can send it to us. Daniel, do you have any final words for anybody watching, or any advice about getting involved in data analytics?
Again, as I said, well, in terms of advice, it's a very interesting field. So I'm sure if you're in this video, you came online in this video, I'm sure you are thinking about, or maybe you are already in studying into a thing. I would say it's a very, very interesting subject, and very, very interesting course. And moreover, there's a huge demand in the job sector. So obviously, if you will do it, I'm sure you would find some success into it for sure, because especially in Ireland, we have a big demand, and obviously there's also a shortage as well. So yeah, so I would say that's my advice. But also I would say, in terms of advice, in terms of your technical skill, also focus on your soft skills as well, which is as important as your technical skills as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And it is true that all of the reports coming out from places like Enterprise Ireland or Skills Ireland are all saying that there's a shortage of data analysts and tech staff across Europe and in Ireland. So the opportunities are there, if you're willing to take them. Thank you very much, Daniel, for that. That's been brilliant. And I look forward to seeing you, of course, Daniel, on the course, and hopefully some of you joining us on the course and welcoming you there. And we'll say good evening. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thanks, Luke, so much. Have a good day. And bye-bye, everybody.